Welcome to Discovering. Tonight we continue the conversation about whitetail deer management here in the Upper Peninsula and what is happening with our deer herd. I sat down with Jim Hammill, a retired DNR wildlife biologist of 30 years, to talk about deer management, biology, hunting regulations, habitat, and more.
I think we're threatening future generations with our deer management in the Upper Peninsula right now.
And at the end of the show, a more feel-good story for you. One about a young man in Manistee who makes and sells his own fishing lures. So sit back and relax. It's Monday night, and it's time for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
If you're a deer hunter or have been following along on the program over the past year, you know our deer herd is in rough shape in many parts of the UP.
You know, if things continue to go badly, I can see a time when deer hunting no longer exists in large parts of the UP.
We will have ongoing discussions about our whitetail deer population here on the show, what happened and what can be done. But why continue this conversation? And that's because our hunting culture and traditions here in the UP are quickly becoming a thing of the past.
So in order to get something done up here, we need to make sure that the deciders understand what we're up against here in the UP. Because most people who are really the deciders don't spend much time up here. Often they don't know a lot about the Upper Peninsula deer dynamics. And they certainly don't know anything about Upper Peninsula culture. And deer are part of our culture.
The UP was once a destination for deer hunters from across the Midwest, and over the last few decades, the number of hunters coming up here has decreased, and the tradition of deer camps is slowly vanishing.
We've lost about half of our deer hunter population in the Upper Peninsula since 1985. Half of the hunters that used to hunt the UP don't hunt here anymore. Now, there's confounding reasons for that. Some people have aged out. Hunting is less a critical sport than it used to be. That's all true. But there are places where that's not happening. There are places where people are going to. There are destinations for hunting. And the reasons that they are is because there's animals there. My wife and I have done a little bit of real estate work in the last 20 years, and I can tell you thousands of acres right now that have been sold in the Upper Peninsula because there's no more deer.
Our deer population has been on a steady decline since about 1995.
We went through a lot of mild winters, especially in the 80s. A lot of mild winters, and then a huge increase in the amount of timber that was cut during the wintertime, which directly fed deer. And so mild winters and a lot of timber cut in the winter, fresh tops on the ground and so forth, allowed this herd to just explode. And then we got the winters of 95 and 96. And you know, some people say, to this day, they say, we never recovered after 95, 96. Well, no, you didn't. Because what happened is we had way too many deer on the landscape at that time. And when those winters came, that was a come to Jesus moment. That herd just crashed, and then since then, they haven't been able to recover because we don't have the habitat to hold them. What has happened since the 1995 is we've gone like this: boom, 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 boom. We're walking down the stairs. So the highs are not as high as they were, and the lows are lower than they were. Probably fewer deer in most of the Upper Peninsula right now than we had during the pine era when the original forests were being cut, or shortly thereafter. When you have nearly half of the land surface in the Upper Peninsula with less than 10 deer per square mile and probably closer to 5 deer per square mile, you're at a point where you're almost at an unhuntable population. And that's a serious situation to be in. And, in the central part and the southern part of the Upper Peninsula, the situation is different. Here in southern Iron County, there are more deer than that. And certainly southern Dickinson and most of Menominee County and parts of Delta County, deer numbers are still fairly good.
Currently, the DNR does not have a population goal for whitetail deer in the UP and no real estimate of how many deer there are.
If you don't have a population goal, anywhere you are is either right or it's wrong. So where do you want this deer herd to be? Do you want the deer herd in the Lake Superior watershed to be 5 deer per square mile? And if that's the case, if you want them to be 5 deer per square mile, you have to recognize the potential to lose that herd entirely because of a series of difficult winters and the predator population that's affecting them. And in the banana belt down here, do you want 50 deer per square mile in areas that are close to Wisconsin and CWD populations there? Do you want that high a number? And if the answer is no, and it should be no, what are you going to do to bring that down? But right now we've got, the goal is not there. It's not there for deer. It's not there for wolves. It's really not there for bears either.
I asked Jim what he feels a good deer population goal would be.
I think a number that we should look at and think about, and a goal that we should have, is to have buck hunter success across the Upper Peninsula at the level of about 30%. If we could maintain 30% buck hunter success, I think people would be satisfied with the number of deer in a herd that provides that number of bucks. And we were there. I mean, we were above that for a number of years. But recently, no. Like in the Lake Superior watershed especially, we're probably 12%, 15%. It's bad.
And how did we get here?
I can tell you that even before wolves happened to reoccupy the Upper Peninsula, we were losing about half of our fawn crop every year to the predators that were there existing, and also other reasons. And now in these days, at least 60% don't make it. And after a difficult winter, and during a difficult winter, we could lose up to 70% of our entire deer herd. So we're in a situation where this deer herd is in a precarious position. I'm going to stick with the predator situation for a minute because most people are blaming predators because it seems like a direct relationship. The number one predator in the Upper Peninsula on whitetail deer are coyotes. So, there's why don't we harvest more coyotes? Well, both the state and federal government for decades and decades and decades tried to reduce and remove coyotes from much of the United States, never were successful. They are too productive. So black bears. Black bears are an important predator on whitetail deer in about the first 6 weeks of a fawn's life. After that, usually fawns can evade black bears. So a lot of folks say, well, we can reduce the black bear population. Not likely, mostly because there's an awful lot of people, 40,000 or so people every year that want to hunt black bears. So the people in Michigan want a very robust black bear population. And, where wolves are, deer are going to be their primary component of food. And about half their diet every year is white-tailed deer, about 50% of their diet. So they're a significant predator. That is for sure. So, folks have said, well, why isn't the DNR managing these wolves? And, it's been said time after time after time that they're on the endangered species list. And, I'd like to think that they're going to come off the list, so some more regulation of the wolf population might be possible. But here's my prediction. There's a lot of people who revere wolves. And when it comes right down to it, the people who revere wolves outnumber by far those people who disdain wolves.
We have been talking about deer habitat loss quite a bit on the show this year, but it's worth reiterating for just a minute. The short story is, for decades the timber industry has cut the hemlock and cedar that is crucial for deer to survive our long winters, and it hasn't stopped. And our forests lack the diversity deer need for food and shelter.
A reflection of that fact is the fact that even in a normal winter now, we lose deer to malnutrition. Why? Because we don't have the shelter to hold those animals, even in a normal winter.
Progress has been made, but it's recent and slow. Both timber production and deer hunting are vital to our culture and economy here in the UP.
We have to look at the long run here. What's going to happen to those stands in the future unless we change our practices right now? And unless we invest in making these forests more productive, more stable in the future, and by stable, I mean more diverse in the future. Unless we do that, all we're doing is kidding ourselves as far as management for wildlife and timber production. We want stability, we want sustainability, and we want a future that has forestry and has wildlife in it here in the UP.
The Natural Resources Commission made some minor changes to deer hunting regulations in the UP this year, the main one being the issuance of less doe permits in the mid-snowfall zone, which Jim agrees with.
I think that in the Upper Peninsula, the most important deer on the landscape is the adult doe. That's the only way that this herd is going to increase in the future, is by a relatively strict protection of those antlerless deer, especially the adult does. The deer population is a matriarchal society. It's led by those adult does. They are very productive. They are capable of producing fawns until they're 12, 15 years old. And if it's production of fawns and recruitment of those fawns into a breeding population, that's going to mean the future of our deer herd. And I believe that antlerless deer should be off limits for taking in the deep snow zone, and in most years, even in the moderate snow zone. In the low snow zone, that is that area of South Dickinson, Menominee County, parts of Delta County, and even stretching over along US 2 to Manistee area. In that area, it's a different story, and we should be, in my opinion, we should be aggressively shooting antlerless deer there to keep that population in check. If you look at the dynamics of deer in the UP, if you see it's an imbalance, that's what we want. You want to have a very strong, robust population of antlerless deer up here, because you have the possibility of losing an entire age class or two. And the only way that you can recover from getting hit that hard by winter conditions is having a lot of older age class females in the population. So that's to me, that's a sign of good health for the UP deer herd. I think we are going to have to do some real dramatic things in order to bring this population back to a point where people are satisfied with the number of deer around. We have a situation where we're shooting 2 bucks right now, basically all of the UP. I think in the Lake Superior watershed, that's a mistake. I think we should back off, have a one buck limit up there. And the reason I'm saying that is that we have people that are saying, well, the ratio of does to bucks is much too high in most of the UP, and this includes the Lake Superior watershed, the deep snow zone. And at the same time, those people want to have the opportunity to shoot 2 bucks. That doesn't make sense, does it? And we already know that the predators are going to do what they do. So it's up to us to make a difference biologically with these deer. I think this fall's deer hunting is going to be an improvement over last year, and you're going to see it mostly in the central and southern portions of the UP. But there will be an uptick in the Lake Superior watershed as well. And the reason for that is, of course, the fawns that went into last winter have a high probability of having survived the winter. At least weather conditions were probably not, wouldn't be responsible for them dying. So, other than predation, the fawns that were born in the spring of 23, the males will be your spikes and forks and 6-pointers this year, and you're going to see an uptick in those deer throughout the Upper Peninsula, I think. But you just can't be lulled into thinking, well, things are getting better, because this is a blip due to last winter, which was essentially a non-winter, as everybody knows.
There are multiple opinions out there on how our deer herd should be managed and what can and should be done, both with hunting regulations and other factors that affect our deer. And I believe all ideas should be heard and weighed in on. Lay it all out on the table, find the best solutions, and at some point, very soon, we all need to be on the same page. Easier said than done, and that's true of everything that needs to be done. What we can all agree on is we don't have an easy road ahead, and it's going to take time to improve deer hunting in a place that was once a deer destination. Jim and I talked for well over an hour about deer. If you want to listen to the full conversation, I will have it posted on my website by tomorrow afternoon at discovertheup.com.
We're making a trout spinner.
15-year-old Blake Lukoski started making his own fishing lures when he was only 11 after attending a local lure-making workshop.
Ron Avery, I don't know if you know him, he's from Munising. He did a lure-making workshop at the Madigan's Hardware in Munising and kind of got me into it a little bit because I already liked fishing quite a bit.
Blake makes a couple different sizes of his trout spinners.
So it's pretty much the same concept, but with bigger parts. So this would be for like coho and pike, bass, stuff like that. I get to experiment with a lot of different types of lures, and if I want to try something new, I can just get the parts for it or figure it out.
And business has grown over the last 4 years.
Just in the basement starting off, and now I'm basement and garage. I started off with just the spinners, and then I started pouring my jigs.
Blake pours and ties his own jigs. Exactly how he does it is a secret he perfected after much research.
This, I pour the lead onto the hook, and then I use powder paint to paint it. So there's a little vise, and then I've got this material. It's just like a synthetic material, and then I wrap it with this thread here. This would be for coho, pike, stuff, mainly those two, splake.
This young entrepreneur sells his baits at local tackle shops.
Denman's in Munising, and then Blades Bait and Tackle in Kipling, I'm there, and then Hillside in Munising.
Blake will be selling his lures at the UP Ice Fishing and Hunting Expo in Escanaba this weekend. Of course, school comes before the bait business, so he'll be a little late on Friday, but he'll be there all day Saturday and Sunday. That's all for tonight, and I hope to see you right back here next week for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.